Alright fellas, there has been tons of information that has come out about BL4 recently, and I have barely had time to keep up with any of it between all my rampant goon sessions. And for those that are as low functioning as I am, I thought I'd make this video to just kind of consolidate the most interesting information that we've gotten so far. And of course, yap about my opinions on everything, but I promise I will make it very clear when I am talking about fact versus my own opinions. Now getting on into it here so I don't waste too much time, the biggest thing to happen is that we have seen the still trees for Vex and Rafa in full. I will not be going over still trees entirely in this video as there are over 100 stills for each Vault Hunter. However, in the description I will link Jolt's Dude's videos covering them in depth, and instead here I will just be giving a brief overview of the still trees and their branches. So first off, how do still trees actually work in this? Each Vault Hunter has a passive still now called a trait. This is effectively just the feats from Wonderlands, being something that is unique to them and just always active no matter what. You then of course can equip one action still, you get one augment, and then one capstone augment, with each tree having a capstone augment at the end of each branch for a total of 3 per tree or 9 overall. Now getting to the actual trees themselves and what they do, let's start out here with Rafa, whose passive is Overdrive. When Rafa activates an action still, he enters Overdrive. While the still is active, Overdrive's duration does not decrease, and while active, he will gain increased movement speed and increased damage with all sources. His green tree has the melee action still that we've seen a lot in the trailers and various other showcases. He just kind of goes crazy mode and is able to run around and slap the shit out of people. The major theme of this tree does actually seem to be drain tanking, through various stills being able to drain his own life to keep his still active longer, and negating damage through a lot of stills that have Overshield application. Overshield being a new mechanic to BL4, where it's effectively just bonus shield that is on top of your normal shield. This is something that we see pretty prevalently within the still trees that were shown off, but this also seems like a mechanic that'll probably be taken advantage of for some certain unique gear as well. The green tree's left branch is very focused on elemental and splash damage, the middle branch is ordnance and grenade damage, and the right branch is action still and overdrive focused. Rafa's blue tree action still is Apophis Lance, which equips an offhand arm cannon that decreases his gun handling but lets you fire piercing shock blasts, having 3 charges of those blasts. This first section of the tree is very focused on just gun damage and the damage of that lance, the left branch being focused on action still and crit damage. The middle branch is not super cohesive but is mostly still focused with some ordnance and gun damage thrown in, and the right branch is very overdrive focused but also seems to have some focus around Jacques, which seems similar to Amara's rush stacks, being a system of stacks that interacts with your action still. His red tree action still is shoulder mounted cannons that deal gun damage to enemies within your crosshair. The red tree is more so your true gun damage tree. The left branch is very focused on indirect projectiles, which refers to all projectiles that are not fired from your gun, namely things from your skills and thrown weapons. Specifically, this is most likely meant to be the Tedior branch. Middle branch is gun and still related elemental damage, which elemental damage is something that's also very prevalent within all of Rafa's trees. And the right branch, once again, is focused on overdrive. Now moving on to Vex, her trait is Phase Covenant. Vex is attuned to the elemental type of her currently equipped gun, converting action still and melee damage into that type. Her green tree still is Incarnate. This is where she goes demon mode. She can then fire Eldritch Blast during the duration of Incarnate, being effectively a grenade. The upper section of this tree is focused very heavily on defense and kinetic damage, with the left branch being radiation and shields, middle branch being damage, fire rate, and mag size, and the right branch being health. Her blue tree is Dead Ringer, which spawns either a Spectre or a Reaper phase clone. Reaper clones will taunt enemies and deal melee damage, while Spectre is stationary but deals gun damage. This is honestly just kind of Digiclone, but worse, however, in a way that makes it pretty damn interesting. I'm kind of super hyped for this still. Positioning clones, knowing when to use them and which you need for your situation, it's gonna be a pretty high still ceiling still. I fuck with it. But the major focus of the upper section of this tree is just minions, gun, and melee damage. The left branch is focused mostly on corrosive damage, the middle branch is incendiary damage and melee, and the right branch is a heavier focus on her minions. The red tree is Phase Familiar. Vex is joined by her minion Trouble, fighting alongside alongside her constantly, very similar to Flak's pets. It can be killed and will respawn after a short cooldown. Activating the still will teleport trouble, dealing damage in an area and transforming it into a badass. It is very similar to Gamma Burst. The upper section of this tree is very focused on pet and just general damage, with the left branch being cryo and crowd control, the middle branch being vex and minion damage, and the right branch being shock damage and pet synergy. Now again, I will reiterate, if you are interested in seeing the actual stills, every single one of them for these trees, down in the description I have linked those videos to do so. So a couple other things to note, along with Overshield, there is also dodge that is mentioned a decent bit in Vex's tree. Unless I missed it, I don't think it's ever mentioned as a stat, but it is like whenever Vex dodges, X happens. But I have absolutely no idea what this means. There are also some stills that require points in previous stills before them. These are designated with a line linking the two of them. And finally, from the recent Making a Vault Hunter trailer, it does seem like the level cap, at least on release, is going to be 50. And after that, I am now going to get into my opinion section. Now, a concern that I had when they first showed off the trees and how massive they were was that these trees were potentially just going to be bloated rather than actual interesting stills. I think this ended up being like maybe 10 or 20% true. I think for the most part, most of the stills are actually really cool and I'm really excited to play around with them. However, I do feel that there is a lot of bloat and a lot of redundancy in some of the stills. Again, I would say only like around 10 to 20% of them. Along with that, there does seem to be a lot of overlap between the characters. I mean, Rafa being the soldier class, it does seem a little bit weird to me how much elemental damage is within his trees. It makes sense for the Siren character, but we also have the actual elemental character who he is now going to be competing with for that spot. Vex and Rafa also have tons of overshield. When I first watched Rafa's skill tree showcase, I kind of assumed that was going to be something more specific to him, or that he would have significantly more of it than the other characters. So it was a bit odd to see just how much of it Vex also had. While I don't think that this is actually a major issue or anything, I do think it's worth noting just because it does seem like a lot of Vault Hunters are going to be able to do similar things. And that could be either a good or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. Another thing that there was a lot of is that both Rafa and Vex had multiple sources of lifesteal, and it seemed like that lifesteal was their main source of health regen. Vex, notably and egregiously, having one of her lifesteal skills as a tier 1 skill. I was really excited with the rep kits. I assumed that with that they were going to use those as an opportunity to pull back on lifesteal and how busted and prevalent that type of stat is. But no, it already seems like there's actually more lifesteal in this game just off of these two character showcases, and I'm not really a huge fan of that. I think lifesteal is just always way too strong, and that other ways of keeping yourself alive are just always way more interesting. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it does seem like there's a lot of redundancy within these trees, and there's a lot of overlap between different skills. I feel like this is probably intentional because the way that these trees are designed, it seems almost like they're trying to incentivize you to stick within a single tree, because a lot of these skills so far have seemed to be very heavily related to their specific action skill of that tree, especially with progressing down the tree being specific to the branch that you're spending points in. I've talked about this before in my last video about Borderlands 4, but again, I'm still really not a huge fan of this. I think while we have more possible options than ever before, I mean, each character has over 100 skills, that is ridiculous. It is coming with way more limitations than we've ever had, and I don't like that feeling of being limited with my builds and being shoehorned into a specific style of tree. I do think there is enough skills that aren't specific to action skills to be interesting, but I feel like if you want to make the strongest build possible, very likely you're going to be focusing a majority of your points into one tree, especially considering that the cap does seem to be level 50, at least on launch. This means that at most, we will have 50 skill points. It'll take 25 skill points to get down to your capstone augment, which is pretty average. That's not that bad, half your skill points to max out a single tree. The problem comes with the capstone not actually being the only capstone. These final tiers also have other skills within them, and those other skills are capstone powered. Like, these aren't just like tier 1 skills that are just kind of thrown down there for flavor. These are incredibly strong skills that are worthy of being a tier 6 skill, and that would be fine, but the distribution of points among these is incredibly inconsistent. Some branches only have 1 skill, some branches have 2 skills, some skills are only 1 point, others are 5 points, others are 3 points. So say you want one of those 5-point capstone skills, you're now spending 30 points in a single skill tree, leaving you with only 20 to dump elsewhere. However, say you're lucky and the build you want to do only takes you down to a capstone where you have 1 point to spend there. You get 4 more skill points than that other build had. I don't think the tier 6 should have this level of inconsistency within its skills, because it kind of just makes certain branches inherently more valuable than others. Along with that, it's pretty arbitrary what is worth 1 point versus what is worth 5 points. For example, a 1 point skill for Rafa, Hemolitions. Overdrive still. While Overdrive is active, Rafa may use grenades while cooling down at the cost of health. Every time a grenade is used this way, it costs more health until Rafa's grenade fully cools down. This is a way for you to entirely bypass the cooldown of your grenades in a branch that is focused on ordnance damage, and it is worth 1 point. For 5 points, Vex should have a total of 30% corrosive damage and 15% corrosive status effect damage. Now, I get that this is a very unfair comparison because these are 2 entirely different Vault Hunters, but I don't know, that comparison just seemed funny to me. If we do want to look at another Rafa skill, we can take a look at El Diablito. This is the same branch of the same tree as Hemolitions, but for 5 points, a portion of all fire damage Rafa deals also deals bonus fire ordnance damage. This is up to a max of 50% at 10% per skill. Don't get me wrong, this is a pretty damn good skill, and at the numbers that it's currently at, yeah, it probably makes sense that it's not a 1-pointer. That being said, I almost feel like it's worth nerfing the max damage of it to just make it 1 point. Like, I don't know, would 25 to 30% be that crazy for 1 point? Especially considering it synergizes incredibly well with Hemolitions, and therefore you'd probably still be spending 2 points as a capstone in this tree anyways. Personally, for the sake of keeping skill point distribution a little bit more fair across the board, I'd say probably, but I mean, I don't know, man, you could also just say fuck it and just keep the numbers the same and put it all at 1 point. Keep in mind, in BL3, Short Fuse is a 1 point skill, and that is probably one of the single most obscene capstones in the franchise. But I don't know, let me know your opinions down in the comments. But okay, that is enough about skill trees. There's more that I want to talk about here because we actually got to see the pre-order bonuses, and with those we did actually get some pretty interesting information. This is the breakdown for the Super Deluxe Edition. We get the Bounty Pack bundle, the Vault Hunter pack, Firehawk's Fury, Gilded Glory pack, and the Ornate Order pack. Now with Ornate Order, Gilded Glory, and Firehawk's Fury, these are all cosmetics, but it does actually tell us what cosmetics there are. Of course, we're getting Vault Hunter heads, skins, and bodies, but weapon skins are also making a return, along with Echo 4 drone skins. What is noticeably absent, and to my dismay, are trinkets. I feel like it's probably a safe bet that since we're not seeing any here, we probably aren't getting trinkets again because I don't really think they were that popular of a system anyways, as much as I personally loved them. There's also no room customizations, but I also don't think there were any room customizations with any pre-order bonuses for BL3. So that's not totally out of the question just yet. Now the Bounty Pack bundle, this has 4 unique areas plus new missions and unique bosses, 4 vault cards, and new gear, weapons, vehicles, and cosmetics. This to me sounds like Headhunters or like the Cartels or Captain Haunt event from BL3. DLC that focuses on smaller areas with a boss at the end and just giving you some smaller content to work through. The 4 unique areas is very likely 1 area per bounty pack, especially with it having 4 vault cards. I imagine each vault card in each area will release together. Which vault cards are returning? That's a pretty big new piece of information. I'm pretty excited about that. I was personally a pretty big fan of the vault cards. I thought they were a neat system, and I'm really glad to see them coming back. Now, what I know a lot of people are going to be really excited about coming back is Vault Hunter packs. These come with 2 new playable Vault Hunters, new story missions and side missions, 2 new map regions, and of course new gear, weapons, and cosmetics. And yes, you did hear that right, new playable Vault Hunters. We are getting 2 DLC Vault Hunters just like BL2 and the pre-sequel, which is pretty damn cool. It does also seem like these are going to be releasing alongside story DLC. There is no mention of a direct season pass like in the BL3 Super Deluxe Edition where there was the season pass for the 4 story DLC, but I do assume with this mentioning that it's specifically new story missions, along with 2 new map regions rather than areas as mentioned in the Bounty Pack bundle, I can only assume that this is probably confirming 2 story DLCs. Now the final thing to mention, there have been some people that were flown out to playtest BL4 early and be able to make videos on their opinions. I'm not going to be covering any of that here as I don't want to take away from anyone else's videos, but you can definitely find those around and I think it does give some pretty valuable insight. Final thing to mention, I will not be streaming today as this video goes live as I usually do. Instead, I will be waiting until June 21st so that I can stream the Borderlands Fan Fest. But that is an gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. If you've got any of your opinions or theories or anything of your own about Borderlands 4, definitely leave those down below. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.